Does he die screaming? Yes. Do I feel that he suffered enough? No. Hello, and happy Halloween. So, long time no see. I haven't uploaded in a few weeks because I've been dealing with some seasonal depression, but I am back on my bullshit, so here I am. And today I have a few books that I read for Halloween that I'm bringing to you on Halloween, in time technically for Halloween, that are all monster themed. We have a witch, we have a mummy, a werewolf, and a zombie. The first book I want to talk about is called Ravenous, and it's by Ray Garton. So this is our werewolf story. Our author kept it kind of traditional in certain ways, but he definitely switched it up as well. We start off this story focusing on a woman named Emily. Ultimately, this isn't really just her story though. That's just kind of the starting point, and then we end up jumping around other people that live in this town, and ultimately kind of end up focusing on the sheriff of the town mostly. We start off the book focusing on a woman named Emily. We focus on her relationship with her husband, about how she has gained weight since they've been married and she wants to lose weight, so he becomes more attracted to her again. And it really kind of fleshes out the type of person she is and her motivations and where her headspace is at. So she happens to be driving home one night alone. I believe she's actually at some kind of support group for people trying to lose weight. And she's driving home alone. The car breaks down on the side of the road, and when she gets out, she ends up being attacked by a man. Obviously, she is thinking that this is a person, but she does note that he's real weird looking. She does fight back though, and she is able to defend herself, but she is not able to avoid being essayed. Her husband, who, look, I don't want to spoil a bunch of the book here for you, but I'll just say we, not just me, we do not like her husband, okay? So if whether you read this or not, I need us to be on the same page that her husband sucks. We are not rooting for her husband. Her husband has no sympathy or compassion going his way, okay? And I would actually argue that he is, even more so than the werewolf, he is the real villain of the story. So the way in this book that werewolves get their stuff into other people to like spread it, the way werewolves spread their stuff is through it's sexually transmitted. So when they've turned, it's like they do want to eat, but they also want to fuck. So as we kind of move away, because at this point Emily survived this incident, but she did fall victim to SA, so you know we are introduced to other people who live in the town. So we're mostly focusing on the sheriff, who is Sheriff Hurley, and this other man named Fargo. Fargo is not from this town. He is just a werewolf hunter, and so he follows them wherever they go, trying to knock them off. So then it kind of becomes a matter of Fargo trying to convince the sheriff that werewolves are real, and he's not having an easy time of it. They're on a bit of a time crunch because the longer they go without concentrating their efforts and attacking the werewolves, the more time the werewolves are able to spread their seed infection virus. Yeah, I'll leave the story there. I don't think that's too much or too little. I think that's just right. I ended up really enjoying this book. It was my first time ever reading Ray Garton. It has moments of pretty intense gore, but it doesn't sacrifice the plot. Like, there is a very solid plot running throughout the entire story. And it was one of those books where you kind of, yeah, you do end up focusing on the sheriff, but you are jumping around between the different people in the town. So you have the woman and her terrible husband that we do not like. This other woman who has an abusive husband, but she's got feelings for the neighbor, and the neighbor has feelings for her. And you have the nosy old lady neighbor who's kind of lonely, and you just have all these different characters kind of fleshing out the town. I would definitely read Ray Garton again. Okay, next up we have our witch book, and this is called Maggie's Grave, and it's by David Sodergren. who I have read before. I read David Sodergren a few months back. I read, what's it called? I liked it so much. So I was looking forward to reading this. And I was not disappointed. I can't say that I liked it quite as much as the other one. That's not to say that this is lower quality in any way. It's just a matter of personal preference. Maggie's Grave is about a woman named Maggie Wall. Maggie Wall had the audacity to live alone back in 1657. So it's like, oh my God, she must be a witch. When the town people, when the men from the town come to get her, they find out, they realize, they discover that she is pregnant. And because she is a single woman, it's like, oh, this couldn't possibly be that one of these men would be a hussy with this single woman. Couldn't possibly be. It must be witchcraft, because we've already established that she's probably a witch, right? And so they end up removing said baby from her. So that's the beginning of the book. That's the basic setup. She wasn't presented as actually being a witch, but with all their nonsense that they did, it's like they must have, it was bad juju. We jump forward in time to 2019, and this is taking place in Scotland. They are in a town called Auchinmullen. Which is, I guess, supposedly where Maggie lived back in the day too. But the whole town is just falling apart. There's barely any people left. The people who are there wish they weren't. It's just like a very depressed, nothing going on town. And we are focusing on these teenagers. They're not having a good time. They're kind of feeling very stuck and very trapped in this town. And we come to find out that one of them had a baby recently. We got these 4 teenagers, Alice, Beth, Steve, and Grady. Alice had a baby named Eric. So here's the thing. Maggie, the witch beyond the grave, she does like when people have babies in the town specifically. She don't give a flying fuck about you having a baby if you're not in Auchinmullen, but if you are in Auchinmullen, she want that baby. She want that for herself. So she'll come from the grave and she'll get your ass and she'll get that baby for herself. And so we're following this story of these teens trying not to die while this this witch is wanting them to. You come to find out that the town actually knows more about this than the teenagers did. They did not let the teenagers in on what goes on, which was silly because they knew that the teenager had a baby. They just weren't concerned about preventing Maggie from coming back to get said baby. They were just, it just wasn't efficient. It wasn't efficiency in the workplace. Y'all are supposed to be protecting this town and doing all this stuff, and instead you are like letting this baby be born, not warning anybody, and then after it's done you're trying to clean up your mess. Like, it's not effective leadership, frankly. The baby is in danger, and not just from Maggie. And then these relatively young people having that painful realization that the people that perhaps they thought that they could go to for protection and for safety would actually throw them under the bus in order to save themselves. The biggest horror element in this is the body horror. There are parts in this book where the body horror is strangely beautiful in the way it's described, and other times when it is quite repulsive. The author also includes humor in, not over the top, but just little bits throughout the story, which I enjoyed. There's one part in particular where there is some very, very depraved things going on, and there's like a soundtrack playing in the background, and it's James Blunt. You're beautiful. I don't know what James Blunt did to this man, but he doesn't make it seem like it's this awesome thing that this song is played during this part. You have these characters that are so stuck in survival mode that they do not have time to process their trauma and all of the terrible things that are happening. They just have to keep moving. Kind of this question of this darkness that you see seep out of them at the end or towards the end. Is that their true colors, or is that the result of the fact that they've been in survival mode and have had no opportunity to process the trauma of everything that they've experienced? So is this a trauma response, or is this their true colors kind of peeking out? And it's not super clear which one it is. It's kind of open to interpretation. And apparently there is a grave in Scotland that says Maggie Wall on it and like was burnt here or something like that. It's not something in their history there that people are familiar with who this woman was and what happened, but people know the grave, they know the site. He seems like the type of author that I would be able to pick up and consistently enjoy what he's written. Okay, next up we have a book called L.A. Mummy, and it's by Lance Lute. And I was so pleasantly surprised because I did not realize when I picked this out that this is actually a Bizarro book, which if you know, then you know I love me some Bizarro, and I was so pleasantly surprised to see that that's what this was. So we start off with if you don't know what Bizarro is, it's nonsense. It's just silly, weird, nonsensical nonsense, good, weird shit. We start off with a man named Bark Mongols? Mongols. Mongols? What the fuck did I write? We start off with a man named Bark. He is in a point in his life where he is in recovery from addiction. He has moved on from his ways. He is sober and he has moved to a new town. He has gotten a new job. He is starting fresh. Thing about Bark is that he is a bit peculiar. There are a lot of pop culture references in this book, and it's a fairly short book. It's less than 100 pages. He goes and he's like, yo, I see these steps, and they remind him of the steps if you've ever seen the movie The Joker. There's a scene where Joaquin Phoenix's character, the Joker, is doing this little dance up and down these steps. And so Bark is like, I would also like to do that dance, and these steps look like those steps, so I'm gonna do it. So he is just in public trying to do the Joker dance, and he looks over and there's some other people. They don't matter. The person who matters is this mummy. It's a woman creature. It's a thing. It's a mummy that's like all wrapped up like a mummy, but it also has a gigantic green afro, because why the fuck not? So this mummy, it doesn't talk. All it says is L.A. Mummy. He says it apparently in death metal growl type thing. Apparently it's a reference to a song called L.A. Woman. I'm not familiar with it. So this mummy is just creeping on him and saying L.A. Mummy, and he's like, I don't like that. So he leaves. And he unfortunately runs into said mummy again. He's at his favorite restaurant in his new town, and he's trying to become a regular at this restaurant. And there's this pretty waitress, and he's gonna try to hit on her. He's gonna try to ask for her number. And then the mummy ruins it. It's becoming a thing where, okay, once is just random, twice possibly a coincidence. What if there's a third time? Okay, this guy's following me. And he tries to get a restraining order, but of course he's describing what he saw, who he saw, and so the police are like, you need to leave. As anticipated, there's going to be some kind of altercation between Bark and this mummy. It's hard to know sometimes if you're reading too much into things, or if you're possibly reading just the right amount. I will say it wouldn't make my top 5 of the Bizarro that I've read, but I enjoyed it. It definitely fits right in with the other Bizarro that I've read. So they're always so fun to read. The two things that I will say that I probably got out of this the most. One, this main character is silly. He is a silly man. If you have a grown man and he acts like a big kid, some people enjoy that. Some people will kind of be dismissive or, look down on people for that. But honestly, it seems that's something that I've always enjoyed. If someone can be an adult, be serious when you need to be, but to maintain the ability to enjoy simpler things, to keep the mood light, to be silly and just have fun. It's something I admire in people when they have that. Life can suck. Life can be hard. And so it probably is for a lot of people a bit of a coping mechanism just to take themselves back to a simpler time of when they were a kid and didn't have all these responsibilities and all that stuff. I think for this character in particular, to be in recovery, to be sober, just his personality, not just the Joker dance, but the way he talks about things is very big kid energy. Like, I wonder if that was a deliberate choice to have this person who is in a very fragile point in their life trying to start over, seemingly having these sorts of coping mechanisms, just trying to get through day by day. It really seemed to me like they're I don't know. Again, I could be reading too much into it, but it seemed as though you have this person trying to stay sober who has this weird thing kind of haunting him, following him around. Could it represent his past? Could it, like temptation to get back into things, whatever? Because every single time he's trying to move forward in his life or like have fun or whatever, then there's this weird monster that's fucking it up for him, right? And so it seems like that could be a symbol for something and not necessarily just take it on face value, So this is my first time ever reading Lance Lute. I'm not really sure if he only writes Bizarro or if this is just one and he does other things as well. I'm not sure. But I enjoyed this and I would definitely read him again. Last up, we have our zombie book, and it is called Rotting Dead Fucks by Matt Shaw. I have never read Matt Shaw before. I will be completely transparent. If I had not been picking based off of the concept for this video, which was monsters, this probably isn't the one I would have picked up. There were other books I saw by him where the plot was a little bit more intriguing to me, but I wanted to try to read him and this fit the narrative of the video. So that's why I picked it. I'll be honest with you, I did not finish this book yet. But I wanted to mention it because if I don't record today, there's no way I can get this video out for Halloween. So I still wanted to mention it because I am like 2/3 the way through. So I do have a pretty good sense of what goes on here. So I still felt like I could briefly mention it. An honorary mention, if you will. Our plot. So we start off our book. We establish that there is some sort of zombie outbreak. We do not know the cause. We start off with a character named Ted, Ted is just the worst. He's just everything bad that you could imagine a person to be. He is. He's violent and depraved in every way. He's racist and, like sexist. Generally unpleasant. We do not like Ted. Okay, so Ted, we're not rooting for Ted. Ted sucks. We also focus on some other characters. There's a father and daughter. There is the doctor, like a psychiatrist. Yeah, there's Ted's psychiatrist, Dr. Platt. So we're focusing on different characters during this zombie outbreak thing. So this is a very clear-cut, not open to interpretation, 100% extreme horror book. So if there were any doubt, let me put that to rest. That is what this is. Ted. Oh, Ted. Ted is an imbecile. There are points in the book where you kind of want to laugh at how dumb he is. I am expecting violence. I'm expecting gore. I'm expecting all of these things. This is just a true to heart extreme horror book. There are not a whole lot of bells and whistles on this one. I am curious to try to read Matt Shaw again with one of the books where I was a little bit more intrigued by the specific plot. I think part of the issue is zombie stories in general are not my favorite. They really do have to have something else going on with it. There has to be something else for me to kind of get pulled in with. I can't really specifically recommend this book because I didn't quite finish it, but I am giving it an honorary mention that it does exist, and that if you like extreme horror and you just want a good action-packed zombie extreme horror book, then from what I can tell, 2/3 of the way through, it certainly fits the bill. All right, well, I guess that kind of wraps that up. So just in the nick of time for Halloween. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And maybe I'll see you the next time around. Bye. Because the whole thing is that this woman wasn't supposedly